Support for today's episode comes from Rio Washing. Rio Washing is a local window cleaning company here in southern Utah. They are family owned and operated, providing high quality, customizable service including your windows inside and out, sills, frames, tracks, and screens. They also provide garage door and front door cleaning. They take pride in personal customer service and have a 100% satisfaction guarantee. They can accommodate any request and make your service fully unique to your residence or business. And with the unpredictable weather here in southern Utah, have full weather protection for up to 2 weeks after your service. Visit riowashing.com to schedule your free quote and make your windows look new again.
I think my favorite part of 9/11 was the Muslim terrorists when they went to Muslim heaven, which we all know isn't true. They can't be in Muslim heaven, they're in Christian hell. Unless they go back and forth, which you can do, because they're both pretend.
Finding Faith and Funny, my name is Chase, thank you for listening. The intro joke you just heard played right there was that of comedian Dana Gould. Dana Gould's a head writer on The Simpsons, and that's a joke from an album he did in 2013. And I love that joke, and I think it's perfect for this podcast, specifically this episode. He brought up 3 different religions into one joke. At one point, pretty much making fun of all 3. There was the Muslim background, the Christian background, and the atheist background. And it was all fair. There was nothing offensive about it. It just is what it was. And I know some of you got nervous when the first words of today's episodes were someone saying their favorite thing about 9/11. But let me just kind of get into this and maybe you'll see what I'm trying to get at by playing that as the intro for today's episode. So again, hi everybody. Welcome back to Finding Faith and Funny. This is the only podcast where we try to prove that belief and laughter can sit at the same table without arguing who said the prayer wrong. Today's episode is about faith, which is a dangerous topic because the second you say the word faith, half of the room leans in and the other half backs out slowly, like you just brought up essential oils at a medical conference. So listen. I invite a lot of people to come on here, and hopefully you've enjoyed the interviews I have had. But more than one occasion, I've invited someone to come on, and more than one person has had kind of the same answer for not wanting to come on. They say, I don't even know what I would talk about. I don't think I'd be a good guest. I abandoned my faith years ago. And I was like, good. Finally. Someone qualified to have a good, interesting conversation. Not a debate, but just a conversation. Because if the only credential for talking to me about faith is the fact that you've never questioned your own faith, that's not faith. That's auto-pay. You just set it up when you were 8 years old and you let it withdraw every Sunday without any fraud alerts or overdraft fees or anything like that. So again, I'm glad to talk to someone that has a different story to tell, because the second someone says, yeah, I don't believe that anymore, a lot of times people will panic. Like faith is some sort of fragile IKEA shelf. One wrong question and the whole thing collapses, and now you've got screws left over and you have no idea where to put them. And here's what I actually think. If your belief system can't survive a few honest questions, it doesn't need defending. It needs a warranty. And to the people who've walked away, there's a reasons I want to talk to you. Okay? 2 out of the 4 guests we've had on this podcast grew up in the same church I did, want nothing to do with it now. And they were great conversations. Because here's the thing. You don't walk away from something that shaped your identity without a fight. Nobody just wakes up one day and says, you know what? Eternity sounds overrated. I'm just going to sleep in. No, there's usually a story there. A real one. A messy, complicated, and sometimes painful, and occasionally a hilarious in a very dark, I can't believe that was my life kind of way. And look, I get it. I come from a faith background pretty much my whole life. I'm an active Mormon still. I've knocked on doors. I've had conversations that started with, do you have a minute for me to talk to you about the restored gospel of Jesus Christ? Which you might as well just look at a stranger and say, hey, have you considered making this moment really uncomfortable? But here's the wild part. Some of the most meaningful, honest, human conversations I've ever had were not with the people who believed exactly like me. They were with people who didn't. People who challenged me, people who made me rethink things. There's times where people have said stuff that made me go, well, I wish they wouldn't have said that out loud until I left. Because yeah, sometimes hard conversations hit hard. Because when someone says they've left their faith, they're not just saying they stopped believing in a set of ideas. Sometimes they're saying, I've lost a community. I've lost a certainty. I've lost a version of myself. And that is not funny. But the way we cope with it on both sides, whether it's someone who's left your faith or you've left your own faith, that's where the humor has a chance to sneak in. Because humans are incredible at turning existential crises into punchlines. We'll be like, yeah, I had a full identity collapse. Anyway, now I drink coffee and have opinions. And I love that. Because this show is not about me recruiting people back to religion. If you've listened to these episodes and the interviews I've had, one question I have not asked anyone is what religion they are. I have not asked what their belief is in whatever theological belief they have or do not have. If that's what you're looking for here, me trying to sneak people back into the church or beliefs, you're going to be disappointed. And you're going to hate like half of my guests. This show is about finding faith in a much broader sense. What do you trust now? What do you lean on? What got you through the moment where everything you thought was solid wasn't solid anymore? Because nobody's walking around faithless. That's a myth. You might not believe in God anymore, but you still believe in something. Yourself, your experiences, your ability to figure it out. Heck, some of you have more faith in your DoorDash driver than you've ever had in organized religion, and I get that. You just sit there like, yeah, I don't know where he is, but I believe he's coming. That's faith. And honestly, sometimes that's a little bit more reliable. But here's my favorite part. When you get two people in a conversation, one who stayed and one left, and instead of trying to fix each other or convert or convince each other, you just listen, and then they laugh together, and they realize you're really not all that different. You've both doubted, you've both hoped, you've both had moments where life made absolutely no sense, and somehow you kept going anyway. That's faith. It's not perfection. It's not certainty. It's just the willingness to keep moving forward when you didn't have all the answers. So yes, if you've abandoned your faith, if you just don't believe whatever it is, you might be the exact person I want to talk to. If I have invited you to be on this show, there's a reason for it. I have specific questions specifically tailored to you because I believe you have an angle that I want to talk about. And whether you have faith or you don't, whatever, you've stress tested it. And whether you rebuild it or redirected it or lit it on fire and walked away, I promise you there's something in your story worth laughing about. Probably something worth learning from, and definitely something worth sharing that people should hear. And here's the thing I've realized. Faith is one of those words that everyone uses and no one means the same thing. For some people, faith means certainty. For others, it means hope. For others, it means tradition. For some, it means I have no idea what I'm going on, but I'm willing to stick around and find out. And honestly, those are my favorite ones. Like, I grew up thinking faith was something you either had or you didn't, like a Costco membership. You're either in or you're outside. You're standing outside eating samples, pretending like you belong there. But the older I get, the more I realize faith is much less like a membership and more like a language. Everyone speaks it differently. Some people are fluent. Some people just know enough to get by and maybe order something off the menu. And some of us are just pointing out at, just pointing at pictures like, I'll have what that guy's having. That looks pretty good. Somehow, all of that still counts. It's dangerous to have comparative faith. It doesn't do anyone any good. There was a lady that was on my mission when I was a missionary in the South Bronx, and in one of those, the wards I served in had over 30 countries represented. This lady was from an African country, and she was a single mom, and she had a daughter, and her daughter, who was 11, one night it wound up in the hospital, and they realized that she had a cyst in her stomach that was crushing all of her internal organs. It was that big, so she was in an emergency surgery, unaware if she was going to survive the surgery. Now, the local leader, the bishop, where we were, called me and my companion as the missionaries within that boundary to pick us up to drive her to the hospital so we could go give a blessing, say a prayer, and just be with the family for whatever they needed. And as we were going to the hospital, none of us knew what we were going to say to this family. How do you comfort this family that's living in a different country than what they're used to, and they're about to lose a child potentially? So we walk in, we sit down with the mom, and we're just saying, how are you holding up? And she was great. She was just calm as could be. And the bishop wanted to kind of make sure she understood the severity of it. And she goes, she looked at us and she, guys, God is so good. In my country, we would have never had the technology to figure out what was going on with her. And if she dies, then I can be grateful for the fact that I got to spend 11 years with my daughter and she'll be waiting for me on the other side. Okay. Myself, as a minister of my church and my religion, and more so of Jesus Christ and the bishop and the leader of the church, we're the ones that, in the feeling was we were supposed to be comforting her. She had more faith than all three of us combined. It's not my job to listen to her and say, I don't have as much faith as her. I must be failing at this. Stories like that, I think, are meant to inspire you or just show you that there's always a different way of looking at something. Don't compare your faith to someone else's, because your faith is just as valid, whatever it might be in. I don't think a lot of people understand this, but my favorite example of faith meaning something different to everyone, it came from my mission. Like I said, I was serving in the Bronx, which, if you've never been to the Bronx is where you go. How do I explain this? The Bronx is not where you're going to go if you feel like you have all the answers. It's more like if you go to the Bronx, you realize very quickly you might not even understand the questions that the answers are for. And that's where I met some of my favorite people that I ever taught or even just came across and excuse me. Just some of the best people on the earth I met there. Okay. Now, this lady that we were teaching, she grew up more or less without any beliefs at all. Okay. We started teaching her because her sister was a member of the church, and so was her family. And she was very hesitant to attend our church. And one day we finally got her to attend our church. And, at our church, there was a member of the church who was giving a talk, and a sermon, if you will. And church was supposed to get out at 2:00. And back then, our churches were 3 hours long. You'd go in for Sunday school, you'd go in for, priesthood lessons, and then you have the big sacrament meeting, the congregation. Anyway, church was supposed to get out at 2. And as of 2:10, this dude was still talking. He just kept rambling. To this day, I don't remember a single word that he said other than I was bored to tears because he would not shut up. And I thought, great. The first time we get this girl to come to church It's the most boring talk ever. Why would she ever want to come back? And I look over and she is bawling her eyes out. And I thought, man, she is really bored. But whatever that guy was saying was resonating with her very hard, which is not what I was expecting. There was probably 150 people in that church that day. She might have been the only one that listened. And whatever he said, I wish I knew, it just struck her hard. She asked us to come by her house that night, and we went to her house, and we sat there with her, and she asked us if we would be there with her when she prayed for the first time in her life. And she said a prayer in her own way. We didn't tell her how to pray. We just were there with her. And as she started to pray, you could see it in her face that she was talking to a higher being that for the first time in her life she believed in, that a higher power was listening. You might call it God, you might call it Heavenly Father, you might call it whatever if you don't believe in anything. That's not the point of the story. The point is, this girl had faith in something bigger than herself for the first time in her 38 years on this planet. Did she convert and get baptized as a Mormon? No. She did, however, convert to Judaism. And it's tough to tell people this. It's not tough for me because it's my favorite story. But my favorite conversion story, if you will, from my 2-year service as a Mormon missionary is the time we helped a woman convert into being a Jewish lesbian. That's almost like the opposite of what you expect a Mormon missionary to say. But the point is, her experience was real for her, and it had nothing to do with me or my approval or anyone else's. It was what she needed at that time, and she got it. Now, again, let me just re-acknowledge something. If you had told a 19-year-old me, hey, your favorite conversion story will involve a Jewish lesbian atheist, I would have said, cool. So am I getting transferred immediately right after that? Nope. Turns out that was the assignment. And it's my favorite one. So here's what that experience taught me. Faith is not a one-size-fits-all experience. It is deeply personal. It's shaped by where you've been, what you've felt, what you've lost, and what you're still hoping to find. All of those are different for everyone, no matter what belief system you're in. And when we try to force everyone into the exact same definition of faith, we don't strengthen belief, we shrink it. But when we allow faith to be something that can grow, stretch, and look different from person to person, that's when it becomes powerful. Because now it's not just about being right. It's about being real. So wherever you are today, if your faith is strong, or if it feels shaky, or if it feels like it's currently on vacation and not returning your calls, you are not alone, and you are not disqualified. You are just a human being trying to make sense of something bigger than you. And maybe that's what faith really is. Not having all the answers, but being willing to stay in the conversation, even when it's messy, even when it's uncomfortable, and yes, even if it's a little funny. Thank you for listening to Finding Faith in Funny. And if nothing else, have a little faith, whatever that means to you. I appreciate you listening. If you have thoughts or comments on this or any other episode that we've done, please, by all means, email me, faithandfunny@gmail.com. I want to hear your experiences. And if you don't want me to read them, I don't have to. And if you don't want to tell me your name, whatever, lie for all I care. Just tell me a human experience. And if this episode works for you, good. It means I did my job. I'll have a guest for next week so we can, get back to what makes this podcast good. Anyways, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next Monday.